Information, inspiration, motivation. You are now listening to the Going North podcast, where you're going to get all three of those things and more. I'm your host, author, speaker, and book enthusiast, Dom Brightman. And every week, we're going to be hearing from an author who's going to share their expertise to help you charge forward in life. Now let's get on with the show. And today on the Going North podcast, where we bring you some fabulous humans from across the globe, today is a different day because, my goodness, we got a doctor in the house, y'all. We got a doctor in the house. It doesn't even have a lab coat, which is even better because this author right here, best-selling author. His website gets hundreds of thousands of views monthly, y'all, monthly. And from 2015 to 2018, he was the reigning, defending #1 writer in the world on Medium.com. And his blogs have been read over 100 million people and are published everywhere, folks. That's right, folks. Even on the back of your cat's little sewed-up crochet jacket, his blogs are on there too somewhere. And it grew his email list to over 400,000 in 3 years without using paid ads. And what makes it even more amazing is that not only is he all of these things, he is also a father and a husband, and his wife adopted 3 kids from the foster system. And funny enough, how life goes, him and his wife Lauren became pregnant with twins and gave birth to 2 daughters afterwards. So let's give it up for the one, the only, Dr. Benjamin Hardy. How you doing today, sir?
Good, man. Happy to be with you.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. You got this fabulous book coming out in the very near future, probably tomorrow after when this interview goes live, called Personality Isn't Permanent. And man, oh man, I'm glad you wrote this, man.
I'm glad I wrote it too. Grateful to be with you.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So for the folks who have pre-ordered and some who need to order, there's like this powerful story in the beginning of the book, and it was so darn hilarious to me, the fact that how it all began. And eventually led you actually writing this book, and I'm glad that you did. Mind giving a snippet or part of the story of that, of how it all came about?
Yeah, and what's super funny is that story wasn't actually the reason I wrote the book, and it wasn't even going to make its way in the book. But usually, when you're writing a book like this, you actually write the introduction usually at the end. As weird as that sounds, I didn't quite do that with this one, but I threw this story in near the end of writing the book. And I wasn't even thinking about doing it, but a friend of mine we were trying to find a fun way to kind of catch the reader at the beginning of the book. And I told him this story, and he's like, dude, that's got to be your intro. So anyways, this story is really about back when I was in college and dating my now wife. She almost didn't marry me because of a score that I got on a personality test. So the personality test was called the color code. And basically I got a score that was a white, which means according to the color code that I'm passive, aloof, I'm a dreamer, like an introvert. And basically her parents, when they found out I was a white, they were very concerned. They did not think it was a good idea for Lauren to marry me because she was a red according to the color code. And reds are your type A, driven, power hungry people. And they figured that she would walk all over me, and that, they didn't want her getting married to a passive guy. The reason for that is because before me, several years earlier, she had been in a marriage. She was married to a guy who was also a red according to the color code. And he was very abusive, very destructive, essentially. And he abused her in all ways for a few years. And so when she got out of the marriage and she traveled the world for a while, I was the first guy that she dated, like, seriously after that. And so they just thought, okay, we see what she's up to. She's dating this guy who's a white because she's too afraid to be in a relationship with a real man because of what happened to her in the prior marriage. And so they're like, Lauren, you need to, we know that Ben's a good guy, but you need to marry a real man. You can't marry a white. You need someone who is still a powerful guy. And so that was how they saw me because of the color code. And she had to overcome not just her own, her parents, but her own prejudice, her own perspectives, to see that that's not actually who I really am.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, indeed. And funny enough, I guess when you think about it, we are who we are, but we're not always gonna really be who we are in a way when it comes to when we live and our personalities change over the years, and the fact that the tests change too from time to time too.
Yeah, I mean, the research shows your personality is going to change over time no matter what. I mean, if you took a personality test 5 years ago and you took it today, you probably will get a different score. And you should actually hope to. The major thing really is that personality doesn't really matter that much. As weird as that sounds, there's many things that are far more powerful. Um, and personality is just a byproduct. Your identity is actually way more important. Your identity is how you define and describe yourself. And that is what ultimately becomes your personality. So what's way more important and interesting actually is defining who you want to be and being really thoughtful about how you describe and explain yourself. Most people, they speak in very definitive terms about who they are. Like, I'm an introvert, just as an example, rather than thinking about who they want to be in the future and telling people about their future identity and then letting that be the thing that shapes their behavior.
Ah, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And it's good that you're actually putting that out there, and folks need to grab onto that thought a lot more often now than ever before, because I feel like that's a buzzword, and a lot of folks use introvert as a badge of honor because I feel like that's something I hear, especially funny enough, from my day job as a library, where a lot of folks like to not be social butterflies and whatnot. But I feel like a lot of folks, even outside of that world, just want to claim introversion, and then they realize, nah, I think I really charge myself by being around people, and heck, even discovering the fact that really folks are always changing.
Well, and none of us are purely one or the other. Actually, Carl Jung, who is the psychologist that the Myers-Briggs claims to be based on, said there's no such thing as a pure introvert or a pure extrovert. Such a person would be in a lunatic asylum. So none of us are one or the other. There's a theory called the Big Five, which is kind of the core theory of personality that is the most scientific. And rather than putting you into a type or a category, and by the way, there's no such thing as a personality type. That's a very overly simplistic and stereotyping way of looking at people. It's just not true. Yeah. That's like assuming that everyone who's of one gender or race is the same. Obviously, that's called stereotyping. So there's no such thing as a personality type. But according to the Big Five, which is a much better view of personality, what you would get is a percentile rank. So you may be like in the 50th percentile for extroversion, or you may be in the 50, the 70th. If you're on the 70th, then you're kind of more extroverted than most people, but you would never actually be categorized as one or the other. You just are somewhere on a spectrum compared to other people. And you can develop skills, just like you can develop the ability to be better with people. You can develop the ability to be more open to new experiences or more imaginative or creative. Um, you get a score, and you can, you're somewhere in your development, and you can continue to develop if you want to. Lots of research on how you can continue to develop yourself in various ways.
That's right. And keeping folks from keeping themselves in a metaphorical box and trying to move in that box.
The metaphorical box. I like that. Get yourself out of the metaphorical box. Get yourself into reality. The metaphorical box. That's good stuff right there, man.
Sweet. Yeah, because at the end of the day, that's really what it is, a metaphor. There's no true box. I mean, yeah, there's cubicle land, but a lot of folks are working remotely. But at the end of the day, if they're in a home, it's a bigger box. So it's all a metaphor. It's like there's no true box. Which is even better is the fact that even more about this whole future, I guess, in a way, because I think it was like Patrick Beck David talked about the future truthing in a way, and it's similar to kind of what I'm getting. for me, what I've been getting from the book thus far is that you want to future to predict your behavior, not your past, as with a lot of psychologists like to do. They like to predict how you're going to be like in the future based on your past, when you should probably actually pay attention and predict your behavior based on what you want to be in the future.
That's exactly right. Yeah, you don't want your past to be the thing predicting your behavior, especially if you're someone who's been an addict or something like that. But in general, if you're someone who wants meaning and purpose in your life, which Viktor Frankl, who wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning, said you probably should have if you want to be present and happy in the, if you want to have meaning in your life, you need to have a sense of purpose. And I couldn't agree more with them. But yeah, you need a future that gives you hope and excitement, something you've defined and chosen. That's the thing driving your behavior today, rather than not having a sense of purpose and instead having the past or your environment drive your behavior. So, yeah, if you want purpose, meaning, and excitement in your life, also ups and downs, but courage and growth, you need a future self that you've chosen that you want to become, and you need to be striving for that. Otherwise, your past or your environment are the things driving your yourself and your behavior, and you're essentially on autopilot, not doing anything. And that's where life becomes meaningless or apathetic.
Amen to that. And that's where you don't want to be, because that's really a dark place with no lights on. You definitely got to keep the lights on with that one. And what's even better about that thought process is that you actually applied it to your own life to get on the same stage as Tony Robbins a couple years ago, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I wasn't. I guess wasn't specifically trying to get on the stage with Tony himself, but was more applying the principle of this is the purpose or the goal that I have, which in that case was to get on a particular stage, the Genius Network annual event. And when you have a vision or a goal, then you can start to think backwards. How do you create a process to get there? You can start thinking more creatively about what you do today versus just doing the same thing you did yesterday. If you've got a goal, then you're required to think creatively about how you can make that a reality. And that's what makes your life more interesting. And that's where you can start to produce some pretty amazing outcomes.
That's right. That AO, that amazing outcome right there.
Hey, yo. Gotta get your AOs. How many AOs have you gotten today, my man? Bank those AOs. Bank it up.
Love this guy. Won the
Get
jackpot
your
with this
amazing
one.
outcome.
There you go. That's probably going to be a new T-shirt down the road for you, right?
No, dude, that's gonna be your T-shirt. Get your AO. Your amazing outcome. You got, how many did you get today, brother? How many AOs?
Let's see. We'll go with all of them. We'll go with 50.
Whoa, that's a big day.
Yeah, that'd be amazing too. It's like, yeah, that's like real documentation right there.
50 AOs in one day.
Yes, indeed. It's like it's kind of like you just had a wonderful performance out of nowhere. It's like you had your WrestleMania Super Bowl moment, and then you just go home and just be like, oh, wow, it's over. And then you just go home tired, and then you wake up, it's like, yeah, time to get back to work.
It's good stuff, dude. Freaking clever.
Woohoo! Well, that's the plan indeed. That's the plan indeed. Got to keep it clever. That's right. If you don't, some folks might pull the lever, right?
Absolutely.
Well,
Get you a quick punch in the face, my man. That's what Mike Tyson said. He said everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
he ain't lying.
Yeah, man, that guy's gonna go against Tyson Fury and he's gonna get worked.
Oh man, if that fight happens, my God, my goodness. Good
I mean,
luck to both
if
parties.
that fight happens and Mike Tyson wins, then Mike Fury is gonna commit suicide, dude. Like, I mean, if Mike Tyson wins that fight, dude, that will be the biggest embarrassment from Tyson Fury, dude. But how crazy would that be?
Yeah, exactly. Since here the backstory with Tyson Fury is that he was actually named after Mike Tyson.
That's pretty cool. I mean, that'd be pretty intimidating to somewhat be named, to be fighting the guy you got named after.
Dude, like that's like a good story right there. Like that's a novel waiting to happen. That's a novel waiting to happen. Heck, and if it actually does happen, well, it's definitely going to be a movie just named after this huge celebrity. And then it's like, all right, now you got to fight him. It's like, wait, I got to fight my hero. No, 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 I don't have a cape. No. Oh, man. But that sounds like one of those flashes of excitement. So, for those who like to get a flash of excitement in life, or at least they have them come to them and they let it die off, what would probably be your advice to those who need to get back on that, I guess, metaphorically, get back on the horse and to get back into action to make sure that flash of excitement doesn't remain a flash, it actually manifests?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to first off define what that change looks like. Viktor Frankl said that what man actually needs is not a tensionless state, but rather the striving and struggling for a worthwhile goal, a freely chosen task. So I think the first thing you need to do, and obviously if you're someone who's fallen off the horse, you can kind of get defined by your past and you can get lost in the past and you can lose hope for your future. But ultimately, you've got to, I mean, you can either stay there forever or you can get back to thinking about what's possible. You can get back to thinking about a future that's beyond yourself. You need hope. You need hope and purpose for your future. Actually, another thing that Frankl said is, he said, life is never unbearable by circumstances, only by lack of meaning and purpose. So the truth is, you need a sense of purpose or a goal that is a freely chosen task. And how psychologists can often look at that is by conceptualizing a future self, yourself in, let's just say, 3 to 5 to 10 years. Like Matthew McConaughey, in a speech he gave after he won an Emmy, he talked a lot about how, his hero is himself 10 years in the future. And whenever he needs advice, he always just looks to himself 10 years into the future. And that points him the direction he wants to go. And so who is your future self? You've got to actually define that. Albert Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge. And, Daniel Gilbert, who's a Harvard psychologist, he gave a TED talk called The Psychology of Your Future Self. He talks about how most people don't predict their future because they don't spend the time imagining it. Instead, they spend all their time remembering the past. So I think the first step is actually take out your journal and actually take the time to vividly imagine the purpose, your future, who you want to be in, let's just say 3 to 5 years. And then ultimately deciding what you will do. That's what Frankl said. He said, man actually he doesn't need a tensionless state, which is to do nothing. He needs to be striving and struggling for a worthwhile goal, a freely chosen task. So your future self is who you choose to be. It's not who you discover. It's who you choose to be. And then once you've actually taken the time to conceptualize who you want to be, and by the way, that is a never-ending process. It's not like you do it once and you're good. Like, I would recommend morning daily journaling about your goals. But once you've kind of clarified and defined who you want to be, the next step is actually to start telling people about who you want to be. Start telling people about your goals. Start telling people about your future self. The reason people don't like doing this and they recommend keeping your goals private is because they're still not committed to the idea that it's going to happen. They're still seeing this huge gap between who they are in the future versus who they want to be or who they are right now. And once you're really committed to your future self, you stop being embarrassed by it. You stop hiding it. Instead, of course you would tell people because you're also trying to act from the perspective of your future self. And when you start telling people about your goals, then you'll start to feel more compelled to be consistent with your words, which will then allow you to have peak experiences, which are the experiences that upgrade your identity and allow you to, move forward and build confidence as a person. So those are some of the things you got to do. You got to clarify your future self. You got to start telling people about your goals, which takes courage. And then you need to start investing in investing money into your goals, getting into new environments where people can support you, and letting go of your former story.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Who's your future self, man?
Ah, you
Hey,
beat me to the question.
dude, be blunt and honest, man. Don't hide from your viewers. Tell them who you really want to be. Don't hide from your viewers, man. Don't hide behind that microphone. Don't hide behind that anonymity. Who you really want to be, man.
Yes, indeed. Transformational speaker that will have a library of his own after he's long gone. So, name of the game, motivational speaking librarian, encouraging other folks to read, lead, and lead better lives. Because, funny enough, worked at the library for a few years, and even though I worked in the library, I didn't really love reading because I was in school, and when you're in school, they give you books that you don't may not like to read. And then when I started reading books by John Maxwell, Brian Tracy, and other folks, I realized, wait a second, reading's freaking amazing and fun. So just really encouraging folks to really get back to reading more often and helping folks to change their lives for the better. And that even books like yours, Dr. Ben, is really going to help out the world indeed because they offer a counterintuitive approach that a lot of folks may not think of or heck even may not think period about. So that's what the goal is: transform the lives of many, have a physical library of my own named after me, and transforming the world and giving talks all over the magical globe.
That's awesome. Well, dude, what a pleasure.
Ah, yes indeed, yes indeed. A plum pleasing pleasure, as the great LB would say, Les Brown himself. Oh yeah.
Plum, please, pleasure. Mr.
That's
Les Brown.
yes indeed, yes indeed. And it's so true about really just calling yourself out there like that. And Nick, even calling me out there like that so that way folks will actually know about it. Because if you have goals and you don't tell anybody, then you will be the only person that'll know. But if you tell a lot of folks, they'll be able to pull your coat and actually remind you of them. Heck, that even happened for me a couple years ago. I said I was gonna have this second book out in October 2018, and one of my colleagues like, "Hey, Dom, how's the book coming along?" And
Exactly, man. Create an environment of accountability. Quit hiding from the goals. Quit
that's
hiding from
true.
reality, right?
That's right. Kind of like the whole solid snake in the box sort of thing for Metal Gear Solid. It's like, yeah, you can't hide in that box forever.
Hide from that snake oil, man. Hide from that. Hide from that snake oil.
It's like, yeah, I got this $97 course. It'll change your life.
Slip into that snake oil, man.
There you go. That's right. That's right. And then make sure you don't slip after you touch it towards game over. It'll cure what ails you. Oh, man. But funny enough, like, I think what ails a lot of people is folks that love the whole thing about putting themselves in the personality boxes with these tests is that it gives folks a way to actually explain yourself, which is so darn true. And it's like so easy to do that, but it's like, wait a second, can't do that forever.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, they do. They give you a sense of identity, and your identity is how you explain yourself. And your identity can and should be based on who you want to be, not based on what some test tells you you are. And so, yeah, that's totally up to you, my friend. If you want to define and describe yourself and be so concrete in who you are today, that's what Carol Dweck calls a fixed mindset.
That's right. We don't believe in fixed mindsets here. So, since this is far from your first ever podcast interview and you've been on multiple talks and things like that, even two TEDx talks, is there a question that you wish podcast hosts or radio hosts would ask you more often when you're doing interviews like this?
I think that's a cool question. That's one I haven't really been asked much. And I think that maybe like, what am I thinking about right now? Or like, who's my future self? Maybe what do I wish was in the book, or what have I already changed my mind about? I don't know, just questions about just what's going on in right now. I mean, often we're talking about the past, and even this book, as much as I'm happy about it, it is in my past. I wrote this book over like a year ago, and I'm a different person now than even the person who wrote this book. And I'm having a lot of fun on what I'm doing right now, talking to people like you. And so, yeah, just kind of more what's going on right now in my world kind of thing.
Sweet. And you
But
brought
I've
up
got a question for you, man.
sure thing.
What got you to start your podcast?
Sure thing. So back in, I think it was like 2012, 2014, when folks kept telling me I got this radio voice for years. And I figured, you know what? I'll start a podcast since folks keep giving me that compliment. I have no idea what it was going to be about. And then a couple years later, published my first book, Going North. And then I lost my father after his long battle with Alzheimer's 6 months after the book was published. And I was still going through some grieving that I was aware and unaware of. And I realized, you know what? I still got this book out here. I should probably promote it since I was new to the whole author thing, especially since it was self-published. And I realized, you know what? I had an idea to start a podcast, so maybe pick that idea back up. And then a couple months later, I shot an idea with a buddy of mine named Amy, and I was going to call it the Mr. Music and Reads podcast, funny enough. And then she was like, hey, why don't you call it the Going North podcast? You already got this book, and it's really basically a brand already, since Going North is one of my main responses to people when they ask me how's it going. And I made it about authors, especially first-time self-published authors, to get their stories out there. So it actually evolved to where I have folks like you now on the show, and it's really awesome. It's really just a way to give back to people and to make it something bigger than me, because at the end of the day, I mean, it's everything's bigger than me. It's like, yeah, I'm part of my universe. I mean, yeah, I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ and everything, but I'm also part of the center of my universe. So it's like, you know what? Let me make sure it's more about others than myself, and helping giving back to others, and help folks get their reps and sets in by having a platform to get their voices heard, and get their feet wet with promoting themselves and sharing their stories, because it's like, hey, I didn't know what the heck I was doing when I started. So it's a way of giving back to authors and helping them get their voices out there.
Dude, you are a true gentleman. I hope the best to you. I hope the best to all you're up to, and hope you have an enjoyable year.
Yeah, it's going to be enjoyable with an I in, indeed. That's right. That's right. Enjoyable. It's going to be in, and not just indoors. Folks getting sick of that.
People are getting sick of their indoors. Absolutely. Have yourself a
So,
goodie. Don't make it too good, though, man. Don't make it too good.
you claim you haven't heard the show, but I think you have.
All right, I admit it. I'm a binge listener. I've listened to all 153 episodes. 253. I've heard every episode, and I'm here with you, man. I've listened to thousands of hours of your words and laughter in my ears.
You the dude. Well, you probably already know the last question every guest gets, and heck, I'll make it special for you. So, if you were 25 in the year of 2025, what advice would you give to yourself?
To go back in time 25 years.
There you go. When the Boys are at their peak. All right. Oh man, oh man. How's it going, you showstopper? It's great that you enjoyed this episode of the Going North podcast. If you really enjoyed it, be sure to shoot the guest an email or head over to the social media pages and leave them a nice response that you heard them on the Going North podcast, so that way they can continue to be inspired to do great things. And be sure to share this podcast with others that you think would enjoy it as well, because we want to inspire as many people as possible to live their dreams, embrace them, and to do something positive.